Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's midday Western U.S. regional forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, I want to start off with an animation here of infrared satellite temperatures taken here by GOES 17. We are watching two very powerful low pressure systems, one spinning here north of the Aleutian Islands in the Bering Sea. This is the remnants of once Super Typhoon Hagibis, which went through Japan over the weekend, causing a lot of problems. The second one is much closer to the U.S. coast, and it's this deeper low in the Gulf of Alaska, which will be causing problems for the Pacific Northwest over the next 48 hours. The two systems are doing two things together. One, they've actually slowed each other down. I anticipated last week that this low would have already been impacting the coastal parts of Washington and Oregon late yesterday, not stalling another day. The second thing that they're going to do is, to the south of them, there will be a very strong and tight temperature gradient, causing the jet stream winds to become very fast across the North Pacific. And they look just like this as we progress into the day tomorrow. Now, the concern here, as we watch these two low pressure systems spin to the north, so one is sitting here, the other one is in this trough sitting right in through this area, is that these winds moving across the North Pacific are not only moving at incredible speeds, but they're dipping down before rising back up here through the Pacific Northwest and bringing with them quite a bit of moisture. So what we're about to start here is a 7 or 8 day time period of very wet conditions for the Pacific Northwest. Now we need to see that moisture transport in action. So we're going to look here now at an animation of precipitable water. So the higher up the color bar you go, the more water that's in the atmosphere that can be precipitated out. So here is low number 1, here is low number 2. As I play this forward, we can see that throughout the next several days, the first low pressure system slowly spins off the coast and just brings in a stream of moisture here, really taking aim on Wednesday, getting into Thursday into the Pacific Northwest. This does move into Northern California, but even though you see some of that moisture getting here in the Central Valley, I'm not anticipating much precipitation out of it. You'll see in a few moments. Now the whole thing reloads later as the strong Pacific jet stream pushes another big branch here of high precipitable water into the coast. And just taking you out over the next week, we see that that time period is going to be wet, especially in the Pacific Northwest. It doesn't break down for the Pacific Northwest and specifically coastal Oregon and Washington till we get out to about day 8 or 9 in the forecast, when things really start to move a bit north, more toward British Columbia. Now let me show you what I mean here. What I showed you last week in the 4 to 10 day time period, which was now this week, is basically the same map. We see that the models did a good job picking up on where that high precipitable water content was going to be slamming into the Pacific Northwest, keeping things wetter than normal. That's the GFS ensemble on the left. Just to show you, I have the European ensemble for week 1 on the right, and it has got the same corridor kind of under the gun. So this will be multiple systems coming through in kind of a repeated fashion, straight flow out of the west at times, running up over the mountains, causing quite a bit of precipitation here in the near term. Now, looking out into week 2, we see the flow breaking down a bit. And both of our global models, the GFS on the left, the European on the right, are painting a drier picture for this same corridor in the week 2 time period. But we got to get there first. So let's take a look at what the operational GFS is saying. So here's coastal low number 1. And you're going to watch throughout the day today on Tuesday that moisture finally slamming into the northwest. So this is in the afternoon, evening, overnight hours on Wednesday. That's the first kind of lashing the northwest is going to take. Now after that, it's just going to be repeated rounds. So interior parts of the west dry through midweek. But look at what happens once I get you past Wednesday into Thursday. First big push comes through Idaho and Montana, parts of northern Nevada, northern California as well. Then we see on Friday the next push. On Saturday, we're still pushing more moisture in. Snow levels I'm anticipating here, by the way, maybe getting down to 5,000 to 5,500 feet inside of a deeper trough that will be coming in over the weekend. And then we see even after Sunday, it looks like things calm down maybe for part of the weekend. Well, watch this. Past Sunday to Monday, here comes the next push Monday, Tuesday into coastal Oregon and Washington. And it's not until we get out, like I said, past day 8, which is now next, Thursday, that things start to take aim more on British Columbia. And we go over, look at this, into a drier time period. So let's take a look at what all of this means in terms of total accumulated precipitation, because there's not one, not one or two real well-defined lows that come through. It's just kind of a constant stream of moisture. The GFS model, where you're looking here at modeled precipitation amounts. And we see that once you get over the mountains, our numbers do drop a little bit. I'm talking about the Columbia Basin and eastern Oregon. But once they get back up into the Blue Mountains here and into the northern Rockies, we do anticipate seeing another, at least an inch of precipitation coming into that area. But in coastal Oregon and Washington, northern California, we got widespread 1 to over 4 inches. Now, the European model is a bit more aggressive with this. Take a look at these precipitation totals again through the next week. We see sometimes our amounts are getting up here in coastal Oregon and Washington well above the 2 to 6 inch range, and even more rain into like the Columbia Basin and places like that. So this is kind of the first of what will probably be a lot of these atmospheric river events throughout the next, 5 to 6 months, which is normal for the Pacific Northwest. Now, in terms of temperatures, we've already begun the month of October on the cooler side. So this is just looking at the last 15 days of temperature anomalies. The question is, do we see anything changing? You know that in week 2 it gets drier, but what do those temperatures do? Well, let me get you there in a few moments. Here's how things progress throughout this week. We're looking at high temperature anomalies or differences from normal, focusing on the Northwest first. We see that starting off in the day on Tuesday, parts of Oregon, Idaho, Nevada are starting off warmer than normal. But as that moisture takes aim, look at by Wednesday, out ahead of it, big warm up here, but look at coastal Oregon and Washington. Cloud cover, drop in temperatures 5 to 6, 7 degrees cooler than average. This is now getting into Thursday. Deeper trough moves in. Friday, Saturday, widespread 6 to 15 degrees cooler than average. Getting into Sunday, much of the same. So as this precipitation event takes hold, we will be seeing temperatures dropping off again in that 6 to 15 degree cooler than average numbers here, all right? Just dipping a little bit farther to the south in California, we're really kind of a bit more out of the fray here, but in terms of precipitation, but you'll still see high temperature departures today right on average, but the cooler weather moving into northern California first, then sliding down the valley by the time we get into Thursday, where we just generally see 5 to 10 degrees cooler than average. And that seems to be the norm for the valley, but northern parts here are getting up to as much as 15 degrees cooler than average as this really active time period settles in. But we want to talk about the longer term. So take a look at this. There's the big troughs moving in, but I want to pause you right here. So we know what this is, deep troughs coming in, but take a look at what the pattern tries to do after the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. You see, the models have been advertising that the end of October may feature more ridging here along the west coast with a deeper trough over the east. Now that means that once we get out here toward the end of the month, and I'll just keep playing this is now the 28th, 29th, and 30th, that time period not only goes drier, but it also goes warmer. So take a look. Over the next 5 days, as the moisture stream comes in, Pacific Northwest, we average, like we saw, 5 to 10 degrees cooler than average. We then saw that once this trough gets better established here in the Intermountain West, that's when our temperatures are now in the 6 to 10 day time period, much cooler than average, but centered here over Idaho and Montana. California begins its warm-up after the during the 6 to 10 day time period. And then looking out here into the 11 to 15 day, the ridge begins to build, while the trough digs into the East Coast, and that is where the resurgence of some warmth actually comes in. So that's at least some good news. We're not going to just stay gloomy, cloudy, and rainy forever. We do have a bit of a change coming where we're going to be bringing those temperatures back up for the West Coast, especially parts of California and the Pacific Northwest. To finish this up, I at least want to show you some new data that we got last night from the European model. This takes you all the way out to the beginning of November. And it may suggest that that bigger ridge feature that's trying to come in may hang on to the beginning of November as well, because we do see a dry bias here along the West Coast hanging on through the early part of November. We'll talk more about that in our long-range forecast that comes out tomorrow. So we'll go ahead and wrap this one up right here, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Thank you.